I'll see y'all later. Okay.
And thank you so much. All right, so thank you all for joining us for our first community safety live stream. This is part of a project of reimagining community safety throughout this next summer. My name is Bridget Burns. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the SAFE Commune program lead for Foundation for Liberating Minds. And Alham, if you want to introduce yourself as well. Do we lose you for a second? I think there you go.
So
Okay.
yeah, I'm back. I'm back.
Okay. We're going to just share your name, your pronouns, and your role in the Foundation for Liberating Minds.
Yeah, so I'm Alham Carter. Some call me Ali. It just kind of depends on the day, it seems. I go by he, him, his pronouns, and I am a co-founder and co-executive director of Foundation for Liberating Minds.
Beautiful. So today we are going to be talking about basically how the different programs within Foundation for Liberating Minds are working towards this goal of community safety. A lot of us have been taught to think about community safety really in the realm of guns or the prison industrial complex, the carceral system. And so we want to invite everyone to kind of rethink that in terms of how we keep each other safe in community. Um, so first, we are going to be answering the question, what is community safety to each of us? Um, I can start us off. So I'll say community safety to me is being able to reach out to people in my immediate vicinity for help if I need it. So my neighbors, my coworkers, my friends, my family. Community safety is knowing how I'm going to get to the grocery store. Community safety is knowing how I'm going to be able to afford food, how I'm going to be able to um, go through a hard time like losing a loved one, losing a family member, losing a close friend, and knowing that I will have an existing support system, regardless of how productive I can be. Um, Alham, what about you?
Yeah, it's actually funny, like discussing community safety. I just feel like there's just so many things. It's just hard to encapsulate everything that it entails. And so it's kind of similar to everything FLM does. I think it's a very abstract concept that can mean so many different things to everybody. And so I actually kind of sat before, you know, for today's discussion, I tried to come up with my own definition that somewhat encapsulates everything, right? And I failed to do so. And so, kind of what I think it comes down to, if I could try to narrow it down, it's a powerful concept. So, basically, like when a group of people, particularly maybe with a shared identity or maybe a shared space, are tasked with perhaps supporting one another in love, in conflict, and indifference. And so I know that may be, that may be too concrete, maybe too succinct for what it is, but I think that's kind of what community safety means to me. I try to bring everything in. Um, but yeah, I'm excited to kind of delve into the concept a little bit more with you today. So
Yeah. I think a large reason why I wanted to do these live streams is because in my role as Safe Commune program lead, I'm working to build this transformative justice network, which involves a lot of different points of community, a lot of those different points of intersections. And it is really hard to have like just a succinct definition because we are also building or rebuilding something that used to be more common in Indigenous communities around the world, um, working to resolve harm and conflict in community is not a new concept, even if transformative justice is a newer term. But there are so many different pieces of where do young people go when they can't go home? Where do
Mm,
elders go when they can't necessarily take care of themselves 100% of the time at home? Where do those of us who are in that middle age of able-bodiedness, where we are expected to meet all of our needs ourselves, go if we can't do that? When that might be the expectation, but that's not really the reality for most people. And
mm,
so I'd really like to dive into, how are we building spaces for children? How are we building spaces for elders? How are we building space for each other to just have a pleasant and genuine interaction in our day where what we are doing and what we are saying is not just about our productivity, is not just about contributing to the corporation we work for or the system that we work for. I would really love to see more just being able to walk outside and greet people. There's less and less trust between neighbors and less feelings of safety. And I think that that also leads, it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy to
mm,
think that we are unsafe. And so we do not trust each other. And then we become more and more isolated and we become less safe. There are less spaces for us to express our frustrations, our thoughts, and our feelings. And then we see that coming out, not to excuse anyone, but in things like mass shootings, in things like assaults or conflict, because that consistent pushing down of those needs eventually becomes an explosion, and we need a place to put those things. Those feelings are giving us information, um,
mm.
which is hard to build, right? And I think from what you and Aurelius and Tevin have told me, that's a lot of what you were thinking about when you first brought together this idea of the Foundation for Liberating Minds. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, I do. However, before I get into that,
Hmm.
I think this discussion over community safety is just so badly needed.
Hmm.
As you know, as some folks may or may not know, I've had the honor and privilege of seeing uh, Los Angeles and California activism
Hmm.
up close.
Hmm.
Quite literally, I could walk outside of this building right now,
Hmm.
and there are armed individuals. And I'm not talking about pistols and knives. I'm talking about M16s with Humvees and turrets just right outside.
Hmm.
And so, you know, I'm just so proud of the Angelinos in Los Angeles, but particularly like just the California community in general, for the people who are really standing up to uh, unbelievable amounts of governmental deterrence. That's the best way to put it. Um, and I'm about to go on a tangent, so I need to avoid that. But I'm just really proud of that. But I think it's just when we talk about community safety. We talk about finding solutions outside of government entities and perhaps larger operations of that nature, looking to somebody outside the community for safety. Um, I just can't help but think about those communities right now,
Hmm.
particularly the California communities coming together to stand up.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just something that is, we read about in textbooks, or you can read about in any type of social justice books or self-help books or whatnot. Like this is real life. This is real life community safety happening, and
Hmm.
just one another trying to protect one another. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, I wanted to shout that out real quick
Of course.
because I love what I'm seeing and I love the energy that they're bringing and really the love. I think a lot of media portrays it as this kind of hatred or hate campaign, but um, at the end of the day, like when you're really seeing it and you see these people coming together, it's just beautiful to see. So,
Hmm.
wanted to give a shout out to that real quick. So, in terms of kind of foundation for liberating minds, I saw I went on I didn't mean to go on that little tangent, but
Yeah, it's all connected, right?
it's all connected. And so, foundation for liberating minds, kind of the different aspects of what we do. Um, so, first, I guess we can kind of talk about maybe how the organization kind of came about, and
Hmm.
then maybe transition into how that dream kind of evolved into different radical projects from everybody, including yourself. So, yeah, Foundation for Liberty Minds was literally a dream I had in 2016. I think anybody who's heard, the Dream Radically podcast or like maybe seen just written pieces by me or whatnot, like sees or probably has heard this story before. So I apologize for anybody watching or listening who is probably annoyed by this. But yeah, so in 2016, I had this dream. We're actually coming up on the date, which is kind of cool, of FLM's birthday. It's just a few days away. I had this dream that I started this school. And it was funny because like I saw my friends and family members there, Aurelius and Tevin specifically.
Hmm.
And um, it was just kind of this. I still have the notes to this day. I still I still feel the nostalgia and the feeling of like when I woke up from that dream of like how real it is, and um, it's it's crazy. So it's evolved so much. But as soon as as soon as I got up, I called Tevin, I called Aurelius, and said, "Hey, I've got this idea. What
Hmm.
do y'all think about this idea?" And, Tevin, I always say Tevin didn't even let me get through or finish the conversation. He was immediately in, and that's just how Tevin is. So if
Hmm.
you know Mr. McDaniel, he's always down.
Hmm.
And then I texted Aurelius kind of in the midst of while I was talking to Tevin, and he was super down, and I was really surprised how quickly it all came together, and how a dream, um, seeing people believe in my dream or believe in uh, this vision, and so far, we have several different programs that have kind of evolved from that. And so the school is actually just one facet or perhaps one pillar, or we've used so many different names for the silos, pillars, anything
I
you could think of.
think pillars.
Uh,
Yeah.
pillar is a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah, pillar. I
Like
think
part of the
pillar's
foundation.
been the
Yeah.
strongest. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. That's the official terminology. But yeah, we've had so many different ways of trying to communicate that. So yeah, first is, the East Side Rising Academy. And so that's kind of the school, formerly the Liberation School. And we hope to start that, kind of in the near future. But it features this, culturally responsive, culturally sustaining pedagogical praxis. That's just a fancy way of saying that it cares about people and it
Hmm.
cares about preserving culture, ethnic identity,
Hmm.
and hopefully, evolving kind of with where society is going as well. So, um, bring that down to earth. We also have obviously community engagement and programming as well. And so we kind of fulfill those things in several different programs. Obviously, we've got SAFE Commune, which is led by the Bridget Burns, right? Um, and then we also have We the East Side, which was another thing that I kind of was a brainchild of mine that Tevin has now taken, ran with it, and it has evolved and become its own living entity, which is really cool. Then you've got, um, let's see, we got the home base piece. Oh, man, there's actually so much right now. And then we're also starting to kind of get into different facets or kind of where I want it to go is kind of more political education as well,
Hmm.
and some other things. So a lot of things on the table, but those are kind of some of the bigger programs we have. But
Yeah.
all of that I think relates back to the original question of what is community safety, and so community safety isn't just one area. It isn't just um, simply just providing food or resources to a community. It's also how can we support them in different areas, whether that's political advocacy, whether that's education, whether that is um, creating a school, what have you. And so all of it kind of fits under that umbrella. Sorry, I took all the air out of the room. So let me
Well,
not only
I
let me not
appreciate
take space, but make space.
hearing about that vision and The home base program is, I think, a really fertile space for political education. It is meant to make participating in local government accessible to folks. It's also connected to the People's Budget Campaign, which is a partnership with a number of organizations um, to push for a participatory budget,
Mm,
which would be rather than what has been the way for people to participate is to show up on a Tuesday morning at 8:30 a.m. And offer their feedback in a 3-minute time frame. Which is something, but it's not very accessible for a lot of people, especially people who have work, who have kids,
mm,
who might have issues getting there due to lack of transportation. Um, and a participatory budget would be a way to braid that into the process. We are seeing city government and city staff put out surveys and things for people to participate, but a lot of people don't see those. It doesn't reach a lot of the people who are immediately affected by the policies, by the laws that are passed by the city. This past weekend, we had a really wonderful turnout for the We the East Side Community Walk. We partnered with Moms Demand Action. Um, they describe themselves as an organization of mothers and others, which I think is very beautiful, to demand action to end gun violence. And I was also very moved by the stories that people shared of going to local and national representatives and realizing that that was not the way that they were going to decrease gun violence like they had seen their family experience. It was going to happen on a grassroots level. And so much of what they do is make space for people to share their pain, to share their feelings, to say the names of their loved ones who've been taken by gun violence.
mm,
And there was a lot more openness, I think, than I expected to the SAFE Commune program, to this idea of transformative justice, which I want to offer some context for folks now. So, transformative justice, I think the simplest way to explain it is it works to resolve harm without doing more harm, which is not an easy thing, but
mm,
that requires a community container, and it puts trust in a circle, in this process of forming a circle with community members, and that circle can hold more than any one or two individuals can in terms of emotions, in terms of trauma, in terms of information. And the way that we would see a very basic transformative justice process would be to have at least one, if not more, facilitators who are the keepers of the circle. They don't have a connection necessarily to the conflict or the harm that happened at hand, but they are there as someone to just maintain that space because that space is where that trust is built. And you have the harmed party and the person who did harm, and both of those individuals have someone from their immediate support system. So it works best if they have a familiar face or multiple familiar faces in that circle, because transformative justice is about finding the humanity of both people involved. And we see that with survivors and with perpetrators in the legal system, there's this continuous dehumanization. There is less room for their stories. There's less room for their identity as a human being. There is less room for them to be anything than other than the box that the case demands. And part of how we hold on to our humanity is community, is those relationships. And so it's leaning into relationships to resolve that harm. So you have this circle with the facilitator, the harmed party, and the person who did harm and their support people. And then you have a talking piece. No one can talk without the talking piece. And the circle is started with a series of questions to ground. So each person will answer the question. The talking piece always moves to the left. And that circle then works to agree on first what happened, which sounds very simple. But again, when you get into all of this red tape, all of these different levels of harm happening at once in the prison industrial complex, there is less and less room to answer simple questions. There is less and less room to actually work to address the needs of the survivor, to address what the perpetrator would need, what the person who did harm would need in order to heal, in order to make repairs. So the circle agrees on what happened and then comes to a collective consensus on how to repair that harm. Now, that obviously could look very different depending on different situations. Sometimes circles take a few weeks, sometimes they take a year or more. And we are open to that possibility and holding all of that hurt because it's very rarely about one incident. And even if it is like we're discussing one incident, there are so many other points of trauma, of harm, of disconnection that have led to that harm happening. And it also rarely happens in a vacuum. I think anybody here who has seen a point of conflict or harm between loved ones has felt the effects of that. When there is um, that point of division, that point of harm, it ripples out into the community. It affects our relatives, it affects our friends, it affects the community spaces that we're in. Um, and there's rarely room in the legal system, in the criminal justice system, to actually address all of those things. It is a system that's very committed to binaries. Either you're good or bad. Either you're a liar or a truth teller. Either you are a pure victim, a victim who we can respect and who can be justified as a victim, or someone who is not to be believed and cannot be respected as a victim, cannot be seen as a victim because they're less likable, because they are um, a victim of anti-Blackness or ableism or classism. And there are all of these things are happening at once. So transformative justice also considers this intersectionality, all of these different pieces, and does not assume that everyone who is in conflict with each other is equal. That's very rarely the case. Also, in a traditional mediation sense, there's an assumption that the two parties are equal. And again, a lot of things I think get lost in translation at that point. So that is a little bit about the SAFE Commune program. We are accepting applicants for our second cohort right now. That application will be open through June 15th, this Sunday. So I'd really encourage anyone who is interested to apply or to contact us with any questions. Um, and it can be intimidating. I feel like a lot of the time we are building a house on quicksand. You know, the world is constantly changing. The
Mm.
environment is constantly changing. And we are exhausted. And also, we believe that there has to be something better. There has to be a different way to do things. We don't have to continue to be in this cycle of harm.
So, Bridget, I actually kind of wanted to ask you some questions.
Okay.
So, first and foremost, kind of what got you into, the transformative justice space?
Mhm.
Also, kind of what led you to FLM? And then lastly, like what's the most difficult part of being a facilitator, do you think? So I know it's kind of a three-part question. I
Mhm.
didn't mean to throw everything at you at
Yeah.
once, but
So I think what got me into transformative justice was seeing the need for more comprehensive support when it came to conflict and harm.
mm,
Um, I have been an organizer for a little over 15 years in various capacities, but largely in regards to food sovereignty and racial justice. And especially since 2020, I saw a lot of the spaces that I was in devolve into conflict. And that led to a lot of mourning and a lot of burnout privately for me. And I started seeking resources. And as I started reading accounts or listening to podcasts of different people's experiences organizing in 2020 and since, I saw a lot of consistencies in terms of conflict and harm and burnout and groups breaking up and losing trust in each other. And I think a lot of it is trauma. There's no one bad guy in any of these groups. And I did also see people get labeled as the bad guy in those groups. And I think I was also part of that because there is this drive in social justice to have this just anger, to um, hold people accountable. I heard and used the word accountable and accountability so much in 2020. And I don't think I truly sat with what that meant.
Mm.
What I really saw was pushing for corporations or state governments or city governments to be accountable. And that would look like taking some money from the police budget and putting it into some community programs. But that wasn't always clear, like how that would work. And when it came to policing each other, um, it was just really heartbreaking to see how cruel we can be to each other, to people in our own communities who are all showing up and trying to build a better world. And we are so committed to finding this better world that we are really quick to dispose of anyone who looks like they might not fit in that. But
Wow.
really, I don't think any of us do.
Mm-mm.
None of us are perfect. All of us do harm, which is also a facet of transformative justice. There's no such thing as a perfect person. And that's also okay. Accountability means that we don't excuse harmful behavior, but we leave room to come back to those conversations and actually make room for that healing to happen, for people to make amends, to listen to the ways that we are harming each other and also the ways we are harming ourselves. I think is honestly like one of the biggest factors that I see in social justice spaces is we are incredibly unkind to ourselves and to each other when it comes to making mistakes.
Mm.
Because we feel like we have to fight and you know I'll use self-focus, but I also am like I have felt this and also I have observed this feeling of having to fight your comrade like you would fight City Hall, like
Wow.
you would fight a corporation.
Yeah.
And that requires a level of vitriol that I don't want in my community spaces. I want accountability, but I also want love. I also want room to grow. Um, and I think it really came down to I've always been, you know, the middle child, peacemaker, trying to do all of the things, but I was trying to do all of the things without process. And process is really important. I think also in more progressive spaces, we tend to be scared of process because we think of process as the rule of law, as the things that we are fighting. But process even exists in anarchy.
Mm.
Process exists traditionally around the world. And one person cannot fix anything. No one person is going to be able to build a perfect movement. And I think the way Foundation for Liberating Minds formed is a really good example. Like, it is so much more effective and so much stronger because you and Tevin and Aurelius envisioned this and fed this together. And your friendship informs it just as much as any of your individual experiences.
Mm.
Um, that can help with burnout, that can help with sustainability, that can help with imagination because, you know, not any one person is going to have all of the ideas. And I really burned myself out trying to mediate conflict. And I was so grateful when I found transformative justice. And that so many other people had been having these same conversations. So many other people had been really sitting and mourning in the same way that I had. And I have a lot of hope in the process. It is an intense process. It brings up a lot of individual traumas. It brings up a lot of collective traumas as well. And it requires people who are ready to have those hard conversations, who are ready to be vulnerable with each other. But it also opens us up to so many more possibilities of building the community that we want. That
Mm,
I I love this vision of this perfect community that people have, but that doesn't just happen. Like
mm,
no one is going to like walk up to you and be completely untouched by the traumas of the world and just be ready to go in perfect community. Like we all have unlearning to do, we all have healing to do. Um, and yeah, it's a process and one that a lot of people have worked very hard to build and reconnect with. But it does work. We are seeing, statistically speaking, transformative justice brings more accountability and healing for survivors, brings more rehabilitation for those who do harm. Um, it is possible, but it's hard and complicated. Um, there was another component of your question that I feel like I haven't answered just yet. So, how I came to transformative justice.
So what is the hardest part about facilitating? And then the
Oh,
last part is in your perfect world. This is one I just added. So
okay.
you didn't miss it. I'm just adding it right
Okay.
now. But
Mhm.
in your perfect world, what does safe commune look like? And then what does transformative justice, what does this look like in the outer world? So the whole thing for me is like I always love accessibility. That's like my thing. Like I want to make things accessible. So for folks may not be who may not be privy to transformative justice or who may not understand healing circles, like
Mhm.
what would that look like in the grand scheme? Like if it was everything that you came up with came to
Mhm.
fruition, what would it look like?
Um, so I think the hardest part about facilitating is owning your own trauma.
Hmm.
Um,
Wow.
and ooh,
Yeah,
yeah, just it can be so beautiful to show up and see the possibilities of this process, but there isn't really a way to plan what comes up for you. And there is this need for facilitators to be relatively objective. Um, but being completely objective is not really possible. Everyone has their own perspectives. And so I think like continuing to commit and recommit to the ethics and vision of transformative justice and to make room for yourself to have process outside of that circle as a facilitator, because that is not a space for your emotions and your feelings and your trauma, but it's holding a bunch of other people's. And in order for you to show up and be able to do that role, you need to really know yourself.
hmm,
Like when I am well rested, when I am well fed, I am more kind, I'm more curious, I'm more grounded. And it is really hard in the nonprofit industrial complex, in
for
law
sure.
school for some, in academia, in the corporate world, in capitalism in general, to make the time for that radical rest, that grounded rest, that time for you to process your own trauma and feelings with friends and to lean into your relationships to make space for transformative justice in your heart. That's an ongoing process.
Hmm,
Um, and I would say that the times when we think that all the rules don't apply to us um, is when you can kind of get knocked down in the worst way. Um, but that's not a reason to stop. That is definitely
right.
a reason to continue,
For
in my
sure.
opinion. Yeah. Um, what I would like to see a transformative justice network to look like, I would like this to be really common knowledge. A consistent thing in transformative justice also is like there are no professionals. There are no
Hmm,
like experts or professionals. Like transformative justice is based in community. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to have a perfect background. In fact, like if you are a formerly incarcerated person, that could make you an even better candidate to be a facilitator because
Mm.
you have seen the ins and outs of the criminal justice system, of the prison industrial complex. Um, Transformative justice could and should be neighbors intervening when a young person doesn't have enough support at home. Neighbors being an extension of that community, building the village. We say it takes a village, but like, who is the village? Um,
Right.
Personally, I am not planning to have children, but I would love to be the village.
Mm.
I would love to be there as a mentor, as an auntie, as someone to support parents because parents are also incredibly isolated right now. Teachers are incredibly isolated right now. Children are incredibly isolated right now.
No, facts. Yeah.
Um, and I think that ideally, more people would just have this in their mindset as a possibility and be using this process in their day-to-day lives. We're just starting with a few people. We have 8 people in our first cohort. Our goal for our second cohort is to have 14 people. But we're going to continue training people. We're going to continue um, asking these folks to then go into their communities and have these conversations with people, work to establish these circles. Um, Currently, we categorize harm in 3 levels. The first is interpersonal harm. So that is like verbal harm that happens
Mm.
at work, at
Mm.
school, at church. Um, Level 2 is harm to property. So that includes like vandalism, carjacking, burglary. Level 3 is bodily harm. We are not currently set up to take cases of bodily harm. We are only
Mm.
taking cases of 1 and 2. Ideally, we want to build a network that can take cases of level 3. But in order to do that, we want to be able to offer aftercare. We want to be able to offer people who can interrupt that bodily harm when it is happening and then offer support to both the person who is doing the harm and the person who is experiencing harm because ultimately that is what will lead to like more healing and rehabilitation for the community overall. Isolating either person is not the answer. And we may need to support people in moving to a different home. We may need to support people in terms of therapy, in terms of emotional therapy, physical therapy. Um, there are so many other facets that go into bodily harm. So, my ideal network would have a place for these people who I know are in Oklahoma. I have talked to therapists, I've talked to sexual assault advocates who desperately want better for their clients, desperately
Mm.
want safe communities, and don't necessarily know the best way to like plug in and make that happen as one individual. But a transformative justice network is going to take all of those people working as a collective, as a village. Um, and that is what I would like to see for the future of this transformative justice network.
I think you killed the game. I apologize for just like littering you with questions, but
That's
you handled it so well. That was
okay.
awesome.
Yeah.
You inspire me. You're firing me up right now. So I appreciate that.
Same. And yeah, I really appreciate your vision, and your experience getting an education that, is like you've been able to access a really good education. And your first thought is not like where that can elevate you, is like it is how you can bring that back to your community. Um, and I think that that is that internal call towards older indigenous ways, that we serve the collective.
Mm.
We are here for each other. Like my siblings and I, when we were growing up, we would do a lot of like my older sibling would get into Greek mythology. So then like we were all into Greek mythology. We
Greek
we
myth-
learned about Greek mythology. Or
Greek
my younger
mythology.
sibling, like would my younger sibling checked out all of the books at the library about gerbils and like learned how to take care of gerbils. And so like we were learning how to take care of gerbils.
Greek mythology to gerbils.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
wild. Yeah.
Different siblings, but like, the like research and like special interest and focus, like I had a friend recently who we talk about doing life together, working to like be in community in a more intentional way. And they are taking an herbalism program right now. And they told me that, and I was like, oh, we are taking an herbalism program. Because I know that when they go and gain that knowledge, they are going to share that with the people that they love, because that's what they want to do. And I really see you going through a really hard law school is not easy. It's not a piece of cake, um, especially for an empathetic person. And I see you working to like continue to add resources to your community chest to then bring it home to the collective. And I think that's really beautiful, and I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate that. Honestly. Yeah, I think that's one thing, that's kind of been on my mind, particularly within law school, is Audre Lorde used to say all the time, the master's tool will never dismantle the master's shed. And so, I don't necessarily plan on using the law to like, I think FLM, there's a better chance of FLM dismantling that system than the law does, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, However, I think mastery of the law can help more so from a preventative standpoint. And, it's more retroactive than proactive. And so I have this kind of like master vision of how it all plans out, and there's moments where, you're even in the midst of this type of education and you're thinking to yourself, like, what am I doing? Like truly, like, what am I doing? Because the work I think is really done in communities. It's not done via the law or obviously via the carceral state or any of that. So, um, anyways, yeah, the plan is to bring it back, and
Yeah,
so hopefully, as that dream, um,
yeah,
that a vision kind of evolves, I can do that.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I think there is truth to that, that like, yes, the master's tools will not dismantle the master shed by itself. But it can be another helpful tool to maybe have in your toolbox in addition to the other tools, and that different people are going to play different roles. I think I'd really like to see us think about organizing more like building a resilient garden. The soil has a role, the flowers have a role, the pollinators have a role, the potatoes have a role, the tomatoes have a role. Um, I'm learning from my friend who's taking this herbalism program, that a lot of herbs, while they are, they might be good for us, they also like deter particular pests. So like parsley deters particular pests, cilantro deters particular pests. And there is a reason that like these herbs have traditionally been planted with um, other plants like tomatoes, like tomato and basil being grown together, strawberries and garlic being grown together. You can also see like the way that fungi, worms, compost, all of these things have a role, and there's mutual benefit. It's not a charity model. It's not someone who has all of the resources dispersing it a bit at a time to those who don't have the resources. All of the plants and animals and insects and fungi have a role. And I think that is more how we need to see ourselves. No one person is going to be able to save us. It needs to be a collective effort. Um, and we need to consider ourselves in this social justice work too. Part of part of what has led to so much conflict and burnout is not treating our bodies the way we want other people to be treated.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
we are also of the earth. We are also divine. We are valuable just because we are here, because we are existing. And we deserve the same level of care and love that we are fighting for others. And I think that when we forget that, that's when these things really start to break down.
Mm,
Um, so, sort of in this vein, um, I do want to reference our grassroots fundraising campaign for Foundation for Liberating Minds. Talking about money is not my favorite thing. I don't love
Shameless
it.
plug. I'm with
I
it.
wish
Yeah.
I wish we could get rid of it. But I think everyone who's watching this has probably been affected by the Doge cuts in some way.
Mm,
Um, we have seen a lot of funding sources for a lot of really vital programs dry up or disappear in just the last few months. And this is a very scary time because
mm,
the needs are increasing, the costs of food and everything is increasing. But it's also time for us to be investing in a foundation that can protect us long term. And I do believe that Foundation for Liberating Minds is that space. And so we have our Liberate Us grassroots fundraising campaign. Through that, you can give $20 a month. That's beautiful. If you can give more than that, that is also very beautiful. But it's going to take a large network to really make this sustainable. And we don't want to just be reliant on grants or on like well, we thankfully don't have government funding, so like that is not something that was cut for us. But part of building this vision that is this safer community for everyone is that it is also funded by and for the community. So we would really love it if folks would consider donating to that. That link and the link to the SAFE Commune application is going to be in the description once this YouTube video is no longer live, but is like officially posted. And both of those links are also going to be sent out to everyone who signed up on the Mobilize Us link. I am also hearing from people that the original link that I sent out is not what popped up when people were linked to this video. This
man.
is our first of many community safety live streams, so we're working out the kinks, but we really appreciate y'all working with us. If you clicked a few more times to get to this link on the YouTube page, we really appreciate that. And this is also something that will remain on our YouTube page for people to return to. And we want to be building up this wider conversation about all these different components of community safety. Also, if there is a component of community safety that you would like to discuss, we would love to hear
Mm.
from you. If you are feeling brave and want to get on camera, that's wonderful. If you prefer being behind the scenes and want to send us some thoughts via email, that's also fine. But this is, it's something that's going to take all of us.
Sure.
This went by really fast. Alham, is there anything you would want to add or leave for folks to reflect on?
I would just say, kind of similar to what FLM is, based on, this concept of dreaming radically, this
Mhm,
idea of, it's an ever evolving concept that means something different to everyone. Community safety is the same way. And
mhm,
so, in that regard, like, really dream radically, or, what do you see community, or how do you envision community safety within yourself, within others, how you relate to others? And honestly, like, try to bring that to fruition.
mhm,
FLM is like truly the epitome of that. Safe Commune is the epitome of that. And so, um, if we really want to see a more beautiful world, kind of what Bridget was describing earlier, I think it all begins with kind of radical dreaming, radical
mhm,
envisioning, and radical love.
mhm.
So make it happen.
Yeah,
Dream radically.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Ah, well, thank you so much, Alham. I think this is a really beautiful seed to start us off for this series. And we'll be seeing y'all more over the next few months. Shoot us any thoughts or feelings you have about community safety. Um, and check out the Safe Commune cohort application due Sunday and the Liberate Us grassroots fundraiser. And you'll be receiving both of those via email, and they'll be in the notes as well.
Thank you.